Well, it's been a very active offseason for the Denver Broncos looking to improve their offense. But Mace, we've got to chop it up about the wide receivers today on Orange and Blue today, because did the room get markedly better, in your opinion, without Jerry Jeudy, now with more Troy Franklin and maybe with Sutton still?
Maybe with Sutton still, with Tim Patrick coming back. And again, we'll see if he can hold up after first the ACL, then the ruptured Achilles. But it also, I think it gets better because you're talking about improvement, okay? Marvin Mims Jr., for example, if you get more out of him, if he can sprout some more branches on the route tree, if I like to say, as I like to say, if he can do that and become a complete wide receiver, there's a huge source of improvement right there without changing your personnel. The thing is, players aren't static. They rarely stay the same, either better or worse. So if Mims is better, if Josh Reynolds, got it right this time, is better, is an upgrade there. If Tim Patrick stays healthy, that's before you even discuss Troy Franklin coming in board in the fourth round. You've got a better room.
Yeah, you've got a better roster, and we're expecting more from Marvin Mims. We're going to preview rookie minicamp. That's coming up on Friday's show. But this wide receiver position, there's some ifs, Mace. So let's take the opposite side. We like to stay positive on this show. But what if Mims doesn't take that next step? Unfortunately, what if Tim Patrick just isn't the same, or worse, gets injured again? You know, what does that mean about Courtland Sutton, who may not fit the timing of a Bo Nix? And then Troy Franklin coming through, you know, some rookie struggles, whatever. Like, okay, the room on paper could be better. Josh Reynolds is kind of a wash with Jerry Jeudy. They're both dropping passes, and Reynolds drops more than Jeudy. So what if these ifs don't work out the way that we want them to?
Then you're getting a new set of receivers next year. Not completely new, but if the ifs don't work out, Courtland Sutton, his contract has an obvious out next year. Now, of course, he's staying away from voluntary OTAs, which will begin later, but voluntary workouts. He's staying away because of the absence of that guarantee. And this is the thing, like, if you're the Broncos, I don't think you want to structure anything. If you do give him more guaranteed, I don't think you want to structure that to where you're increasing your commitment and making something to where getting out of that contract without getting a significant amount of cap space in 2025 isn't possible. So that's a line you're gonna have to walk. But Tim Patrick's 1-year deal. Josh Reynolds, that's he's got a multi-year deal, but it's a pretty easy out after this year if the Broncos wanted. This is it very much is a situation where everyone's kind of auditioning to be somebody who fits with Bo Nix.
Right.
Which players have that ability? And we can go down the line and talk about some other possibilities, like Brandon Johnson, like Jalen Virgil. I'm really intrigued to see what Jalen Virgil looks like coming back. If he can maintain the straight line speed that he had. We see it from time to time. Bo Nix can go vertical. I mean, it's not, he doesn't have the fire hose that maybe Drake May has in terms of flinging it downfield, but he can do that. And there were some signs last year that Virgil was developing into a vertical threat before he had that injury in the preseason game against San Francisco. So that's the thing with a new quarterback and actually finally running the Sean Payton offense. It's almost like everybody's starting over again, and we're going to find out which skill sets fit best.
Well, and that's where I was going to go next. And for me personally, Mace, this is just me, and I'll assume that you'll back me up for the most part. Like, when we say something good about Nix or the system, it's not bashing Russell Wilson. We all know it didn't work, but in the same way, when we say, wow, he's going to run the system, we're also saying something about Russell Wilson. But how much of this wide receiver core being better is the system being ran properly with a quarterback who can distribute the ball? And you mentioned a Jalen Virgil. Well, we've got some Troy Franklin vision stuff here we'll play in a little bit, but it's about getting the ball to the playmakers so that they can make plays after the catch.
Exactly. And that's why I'm a little concerned about Courtland Sutton's fit in all this, because
Right.
he's a good 9-ball guy, a good jump ball guy. He's not a yards after the catch guy, because yards after the catch, it involves placement, timing, but it also involves separation. And that's where, unfortunately for Courtland Sutton, it has not looked the same since that ACL back in 2020. Um, Sometimes it's a little heartbreaking to watch the film of him in 2019, because there was some breakaway threat to him. Remember the
Right.
long catch and run that he had against the Chargers for the first win of that season? It hasn't been as evident since then. And now I do wonder about the fit here. And also with Courtland Sutton, if he extends this time away through the actual practices. Right now, we're in the workout phase. A lot of teams are doing some light on-field stuff. The Broncos aren't. That's the way Sean Payton structures his offseason. They won't get on the field here for another week and a half and actually do football stuff, with the exception of rookie minicamp this weekend. So if Sutton keeps staying away through those on-field practices that begin here in a week and a half, and everyone else is starting to develop rhythm and timing. And look, Sutton's got to develop rhythm and timing like Jarrett Stidham as well. I mean, they didn't get a lot of time together. And the game they did play together in week 18, that combination looked off.
Right.
So there's work to be done. And if he's not around during OTAs doing that, what may happen is the train may just roll down the tracks without him. Like, it may be, oh, Marvin Mims Jr. is getting timing with Nix and Stidham and Zach Wilson. Uh, Josh Reynolds doing the same thing. Brandon Johnson, who was third on the team in touchdowns last year, not just touchdown catches, but touchdowns. He can play. I mean, he's maybe not a guy who's you want starting, but he can be part of a rotation. I haven't even mentioned little Jordan Humphrey,
Right.
who we know Sean Payton likes, and that matters too, because he's now been in 2 iterations of the Sean Payton offense, New Orleans and here. Yeah, like if you're Courtland Sutton, if you want to be a part of this year, you may need to make sure you're in there once those actual OTA practices start, because it may not, your chance to fit in this may not exist if everything keeps going. Look, if Tim Patrick is out there practicing and making plays, there's another layer to it, right?
Well, and 2 things to build off of what you're saying, Mason. Patrick is involved in one of those 2 things. Tim can do everything Sutton can do, and honestly, he can do more. I mean, that's just the way it is. And my second point is chemistry can't be faked. You have to build and work on that chemistry, and that just takes time. So yes, time away. Yes, it's voluntary. It's not really a big deal. But when Devon Vele is there and Tim Patrick is there and all these other guys are there, they're building that chemistry. And like I said, Patrick can do what Sutton does, and he can do more.
You've got Jonah Ellis signing a waiver to take part in rookie minicamp just in case he gets hurt, but to make sure he can be out there. Now, obviously, that's
Right.
on the defensive side, but that's the general point involved with this here. It's not essential, but does it matter? Like, you could have a good season without being around, but does it matter? Yeah, it does matter to be there. And it does feel, and again, when you're talking about either you have a new quarterback or you have a guy who's only started 2 games, success with that quarterback is going to be predicated on timing. And especially when you get into this looking like a true Sean Payton offense, which is a rhythm and timing offense. And you said with Tim Patrick. Now, the big question is he healthy? What does he look like? Does he didn't have bursts to spare, which is what does concern me. Nobody's going to work harder than Tim Patrick to get back. But Courtland Sutton worked really hard to get back, and he never did get the explosiveness back to a level that it was when he was flourishing back in 2019 and went to the Pro Bowl. So you just gotta be real about it. I mean, look at Javonte Williams. I mean, this is why, I would love to sit here and say Tim Patrick is going to be all the way back, because I think he could do slant God type of things in this offense if he's fully healthy. But we don't know that he's going to be fully healthy.
Right. I think the crux of the conversation is this: Marvin Mims. What do you get from Marvin Mims? Because it could be, and I compared him to Emmanuel Sanders when he came out. We know that he ran a couple of routes. I asked Joe Lombardi at the end of the year, like, how do you get him to work on his routes? And he didn't really answer. There's not really an answer other than he's got to do it, Mace. But I think how we look back on this wide receiver group, and we're going to get to Troy Franklin, but I think it largely is kind of hinged on, is Marvin Mims going to be a stud? Do we get more signs of that? Or is he still kind of raw and still needs some time?
Yeah, and the other thing on Marvin Mims is, do they wish they could have gotten more work in with him last year?
Right.
Now, ultimately, the person responsible for Marvin Mims Jr. getting reps on offense is Sean Payton. Like, he could sit there and say, I want this guy to play. We're going to play him. We're going to make sure he gets 35 or 40 snaps a game, instead of, what was it for a lot of the season? You'd look down at the play count and see like 16, 15. It's like, I think several times we talked on the show, what's going on here, right?
Right.
Well, the whole thing was, as we're going to hear from Sean Payton when he discussed this back at the combine, oh, well, Jerry Jeudy's in the way. Jerry Jeudy's not in the way anymore. You did sign Josh Reynolds, but Jerry Jeudy's not in the way. He's not blocking Marvin Mims Jr. So there's no excuse now except Marvin's ability to be able to have more tools on his belt, more branches on his route tree.
Mm-hmm. You want to play that clip?
Yeah, let's hear from Sean Payton. This was in Indianapolis, late February, asked about Marvin Mims Jr., looking back at last year, looking ahead to this year.
Without making a comparison first, I'd say with Mims, we saw him flourish as a returner, and I really think the only thing that really stopped his progress as a receiver was us. In trying to find roles. He's playing the same position as Jerry, and so I've said that a number of times. I think you're going to see a lot of growth with this player. He's tough. He can run, and we're certainly excited we have him. But I think the key is for us, and I say us as coaches, game planning, evolving, and every time we've kind of put his name on a certain play, he hasn't disappointed. That doesn't mean the ball always went to him, but the point I'm making is I think his progress was hampered a little bit more with the depth in the room and what we were able to do, and sometimes trying to balance that out. I think we'll see that expand.
Okay, doesn't that frustrate you a little bit, Cecil, when you hear that?
Very much so, yeah, because it's like, he's good, and the depth in the room, we'll put him at the top of the depth.
What's stopping you? Like, it was like you let this fealty to one player who isn't there anymore. And okay, let's go back to last year. There were some rumblings about interest in Jerry Jeudy on the trade market during the 2023 season. I get that, you won a couple of games. We're feeling pretty good. Let's see where this goes. But you liked Marvin Mims Jr. at that point, right? You liked him. So what's stopping you? Just play. I hope this doesn't come up with Bo Nix if he's ready. If Jarrett, I don't think it will. I think we're in sort of a different conversation there. But yeah, like I hear that, I'm like, ooh, that's that answer. And I know we talked about it a couple of months ago, man. That answer kind of stuck with me. As like, okay, you basically gave all these reasons, said it was on the coaches. So you could have done something about it, and yet he continued to languish with little playing time. That's a head scratcher to me, because ultimately you can say, okay, we like this guy. We're going to play this guy.
Right.
Boom. End of story.
Done and done. But Mace, is it a way, and you and I understand coach speak, and I'm not saying this was coach speak, but is it a way to protect Marvin in a way because he wasn't, if he was the best in practice, he would have played. All right. So
Yeah,
they see all the
maybe.
practice footage. We get to see stretching. Was it a way for Sean Payton to be like, oh, that's on us. That's on us. And then behind the scenes, be like, get him ready. He's not a good route runner yet. Get him ready.
It's possible. That is very possible.
Okay.
Do
Makes
you
more
think
sense.
It would make more sense than just, we
Hey, we got away from us.
Although I've seen in games how play calling can get away from a coach.
Sure. Adam Gase, we talked about the Rams
talk
game.
about that infamous Rams game 10 years ago. That it got away. Like, he admitted that to me. It had, ultimately you have human beings doing human things, and among those human things is making mistakes and getting caught up in the moment. Okay. And maybe there was some of that as well, getting caught up in the moment. The other thing also is you are managing egos as well. You're managing personalities.
Right.
And you don't want to lose a player. And I do wonder if part of it was they didn't want to lose Jerry Jeudy, that he may run the risk of checking out if they didn't keep him engaged.
And that makes more sense. That makes the most sense of anything, because Jerry and Sean had a good relationship. Fans don't like Jerry Jeudy, but Sean Payton did.
Sean was trying to get the most out of him. Like you and I
Yeah.
saw at training camp practices, at OTAs, how often there would be one-on-one conversations in
He's
practice.
coaching them up.
Yeah, like when you see a coach talking so frequently to a player, not just for one day, but over time, it means they believe in that player. They're trying to get the most out of them. It's when the mistakes happen and the coach doesn't say anything, then they just don't care. Like, now there's a line that can be reached. I think there was one moment last year during training camp where Sean Payton, I believe, was asked about Marquez Callaway, of course, who was a former Saint, and he implied like he's got to step it up, and he didn't step it up. And of all the ex-Saints that are around here, Marquez Callaway is no longer with the Broncos.
Right.
So there's a limit there.
Yeah, they went out and got Traquan Smith, another former Saint. And Kez was fun to talk to in training camp, but then he didn't make it. So you got to show it. You got to show it right away. And you got to fulfill the vision that Sean Payton has for you, which leads us to Troy Franklin. Again, we're going to do our rookie minicamp preview on Friday's show, so that's coming up. Everyone stay tuned. But Mace, Troy Franklin could be the most exciting receiver on the roster.
Most exciting receiver, the one who walks in already with pre-existing cohesion with Bo Nix, and somebody who gets yardage after the catch. And this is where Bo Nix's ability to place the ball, lead the receiver, is ideally suited for a skill set that Troy Franklin possesses that can take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, football's a game of angles, and it's a game of leverage. And when we talked to Matt Waldman on a Saturday edition of Orange and Blue Today, when he told you about the triangle, he told the audience about the triangle.
Maybe that's why the triangles are going on the helmets.
Well, Bo Nix understands the triangle of defenders in a window. A window isn't this in the NFL. A window is this. I'll do the Jay-Z thing. Like, okay, that's the window. And Bo Nix is already understanding of the leverage of the defenders based on where they're at within that triangle of coverage.
Yes. And that's what gives you hope that he can be ready to go, is he does have an advanced understanding of these types of things going in to the process. I mean, I think you and I agreed, like Drake May, less of a chance to be ready for week 1 than Bo Nix. Does Drake May have a higher ceiling based on his skill set? Yeah.
Sure.
There are some elite traits there. We'll see if the Patriots can maximize them. But with Bo Nix, he comes in with a pretty ready-made understanding of that. So it doesn't mean Bo Nix is going to be all the way ready, because, and this is where I think Jarrett Stidham in particular, even though is he a great quarterback? No. but he does have a year in the scheme, a year in a fairly complex scheme. That's why I expect Stiddy will take the first snap that we see in OTAs when you get the whole team out there.
Right.
I expect he'll take the first snap of OTAs. And it wouldn't surprise me if he takes the first snap of training camp too.
Maybe even the first snap of the first preseason game with the starters out there,
And then if he takes the first snap of the regular season, first of all, if he does, I think it probably means that he's done really well. So it's not a negative. But all roads ultimately lead to Bo Nix, which is why you and I have talked about this. And I got a lot of guff on social media for this in the last 24 hours, suggesting that if Bo Nix was not the number one quarterback coming out of training camp / preseason, that I would give Bo Nix one possession each half immediately to start the process.
Mm-hmm.
You rotate edges, you rotate tight ends, you rotate wide receivers, you rotate running backs, you rotate inside backers and D linemen. What's wrong with rotating quarterbacks?
Well, didn't Justin Herbert have to wait till Tyrod Taylor was mauled by his medical staff? Didn't Josh Allen have to wait until Nathan Peterman threw 5 interceptions and a half?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Like, think about that. Nathan Peterman, maybe the worst quarterback in the NFL of his history of the game, started over Josh Allen.
It was an awful start.
Yes. Yeah. And then Josh Allen was quickly put in there.
Yeah. I mean...
So let's stop with the hot takey, like, just if Bo Nix doesn't start week 1, it means he's a bust. No,
it doesn't.
But it doesn't mean that whatsoever. Not whatsoever. Let history be your guide.
Absolutely does not. But if we believe that Bo Nix being a good starting quarterback for this team is the destination, then let's take steps along that path. And there's a way to do it that gets him playing time without putting everything on him. You say, okay, he can't handle the whole kit and caboodle, but what if he can handle this part of it? Okay. And then you expand on that, right? I mean, if you're a chef, you don't immediately, go into culinary school and have the capability of creating a world-class meal at French Laundry, right? You got to start with something basic and then build up to that. That's all.
That's it. What's the vision for Troy Franklin as we wrap up today's show? We got to hear from Sean Payton talking about his favorite word, vision.
Troy Franklin. So I think when we went home last night, George and I both, it clears out and you're kind of looking at how the next day might unfold. I think the two of us looked at him like, man, it'd be, and we also knew that it was going to be impossible for us to wait. When the day ends, there's always these 6 players that I think around the league you feel like are going to go pretty quickly. We see him as an outside Z, really good speed. He's a guy that we were really impressed with at the line of scrimmage. We also, had combine, and then even at Bo's private workout, he was there. So probably a little bit more exposure, and there was a lot more coincidence to that than like that's just how this draft unfolds sometimes. So there was a really unique player with a high grade, call it kick it 2 rounds over, that's sitting there by himself, and so we see him as a Z.
I had a 2nd round grade on him.
And they got him in round 4. Nice.
It's a value, man. It's a bargain.
It also tells you how much they like Jonah Ellis as well, because they had a 2nd round grade on Troy Franklin, and he's sitting there at pick 76, and they picked Jonah Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
They rolled the dice that Franklin would still be there in round 4. Nicely done. Nicely played. They won that roll of the dice.
Yeah. Well, as Gary Kubiak says, because the question is the wide receiver room better? Mace, we are fixing to find out.
We are. I think it's better, but I don't necessarily think it's better because of everyone coming in. I expect more from Marvin Mims Jr. I think a lot of the reason why this room is going to be better is Mims in year 2 being used more, developing, growing, being able to do more, and then flourishing from there. That's where I think the key lies. It's in the improvement of Marvin Mims Jr. I think it'll be profound, and I think he's going to be a huge part of this offense. And then my hope, I'm going to knock on my surface here. I'm speaking from the heart on Tim Patrick. I hope that he is 90% of what he was. Because if he was, that's going to be enough to be a really good presence for this team. And look, you need that guy that can just consistently move the chains. There's a reason why they were heartbroken last year when Timmy Pats tore his ACL or tore his Achilles, because the ACL was the year before, tore his Achilles in training camp. Because he'd already impressed the new coaching staff.
Yep.
As he's impressed every coaching staff he's been around. I mean, that's
why he's here.
Yeah. He's on his, Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio, Nathaniel Hackett. We'll throw Jerry Rosburg in there just because. And Sean Payton. He's 5 for 5 on impressing coaches. And he didn't even play for Jerry Rosburg, but how do you see him around the building? You see the way he's working. I'll say this for Tim Patrick, and because I used to say it's about Rod Smith. If there was an employee of the month plaque at Broncos headquarters for a while there from 95 to 07, it would have been like Rod Smith every month. Tim Patrick is that same kind of guy. He won't have the same accolades in Broncos history as Rod Smith, but he's that same type of worker, that same type of player who maximizes what he is. And oh, by the way, like Rod Smith, one of the unquestioned leaders of the team, which is another reason why you want things to work out for him and be around, because as you're going through this transition to Bo Nix, you need leaders. Tim Patrick's a leader.
Yes, that's right. The key to the Broncos wide receiver core, we just talked about it. And the key to YouTube growth is you helping us out on YouTube. How do they do that, Mace?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. I made sure to be on point today. It was so bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's Mace. I'm Cecil. OBT is BFD. Follow Mace on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.